You are now listening to the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Ever have that one movie everyone assumes you've seen, but you haven't? You know the one, the classic, the cult favorite, the how have you not seen that movie? Welcome to the Shameless Picture Show. Twice a month, I sit down with a guest who finally cross one of those films off our shame lists. Sometimes it's their first watch, and sometimes it's mine. But sometimes it's new for both of us. Then we dive in, the characters, the craft, the cultural impact, and whether it actually lives up to the hype. From legendary classics to cult oddities to the films we somehow missed along the way, join us as we turn movie shame into movie discussion. This is the Shameless Picture Show.
Hello there, and welcome back.
What is this place?
Disconnected.
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 I'm starting to feel disconnected.
You have reached a number that has been disconnected.
Hey there, everyone, and welcome back to the Disconnected, live with somebody that I've been trying to get to know a little bit over the last year or so. We've got Mark Murray from the Ultra Flesh Archives, from all things Rudy Ray Moore over the years, and a handful of other places that if you've been hanging around this industry for a while, you might recognize him from. Mark, thanks for hanging out.
Ryan, thanks for having me. Before we start, though, I really want to say thank you for all the stuff that you're doing. You know, the advocacy you have for physical media, doing your magazine, having a podcast network. Now, congratulations with Antenna, going into theatrical distribution. I mean, you're out there, in the trenches doing the work, and we need more people like you. So thank you for all that you're doing.
Unexpected. Thank you for recognizing that. That's a big deal.
Credit where credit is due.
And same to you. We're going to get into a lot of that credit tonight because you've been toiling away at this for a long time, for a lot of things that, much to the chagrin of people like you and I, has not gotten the attention that it's needed throughout the years. So we're going to talk about things like Rudy Ray Moore and Loops and some of these people that have been just completely forgotten to time. And you have been somebody that has stuck up for that. So, I mean, first of all, how did you get started in the industry to begin with? What is the first thing that happened there?
Well, I mean, we could go back to my early teen years, to be honest with you. So we're talking 40 years in the past. In junior high, when I kind of discovered punk rock, and I was already into like heavy metal and discovered death metal, and just immediately the underground that was out there for underground bands and bands that were doing tape trading, and I was doing tape trading, and the networking that was then. So amazing that is lost, of course, today. No one really today kind of understands the idea of like writing somebody a letter and waiting a month for a response, and that kind of inviting and that whole DIY ethic of punk rock and the death metal underground of everybody just it was all pure heart. And that's where I realized that I fit in. As a kid, I lived by my mailbox. Every day I would run home from school. What did I get in the mail? Was it like a record or whatnot? I started, I have a thirst, obviously, for all of this. So I kind of learned early on that if you are active with things, you get free stuff. So how do I, I'm a kid with a paper route. How can I afford tons of records? I can't. So you start, I started like a little like music review newsletter, and I mailed it out to a bunch of record companies, and all of a sudden I was getting records in the mail. I was like, wow, like this stuff works. And it turned into me doing like, local fanzines, covering local bands in the area. this is how immature and young I was when I would go in like 8th grade or 9th grade in high school. I would always get an It's It, the ice cream, sandwich at lunch. So I named my magazine It's a Punk Zine. It was just after my favorite thing to eat. That's how young I was and how innocent everything was. Yeah. And it quickly blossomed because I have a like an energy that has to be utilized. It's just a kind of a force of nature. If I was able to focus that on one thing, I'd be an invincible force. But I'm ADD and OCD and all this, all the time. So you could probably relate to. I think you've even commented about
quite a bit too much.
Yeah. Some of your ADD issues, and we're all on the spectrum in some way or another, anyways. And then it blossomed into wanting to have I started a cassette tape label when I was in junior high. I had my first business license when I was 13 years old.
Damn.
And which was dumb because it was a nonprofit thing, so you don't need a business license for I was just a kid, of course. But it turned into, I would just mail out a letter to all these bands that I would just see their addresses in the back of Maximum Rock and Roll and other underground zines, and just say I have a tape distribution label. Basically you're just giving me permission to make copies and sell your tape, and it's all the money goes back into doing this, just to promote music. And within a couple years, I had, I think, 90 to 100 tapes that I was selling from bands all over the world, including death metal bands from Finland and Sweden and all kinds of stuff. And trying to make my stuff look more professional than just a blank tape. Right. I made photocopies of actual labels, and I would take an X-Acto knife and I would cut them out, and I would take the cassette tape apart and I would splice it exactly to the length of, the music, put it all back together, and then recorded it on the other side. And so I had all these, I was trying really hard to make something that looked professional, but with the resources of a 13, 14-year-old, and, the greatest gift my dad ever bought me was a photocopier. It was the first job legit job that I had as a kid was because I needed to pay for maintenance on my photocopy machine. So the guy would show up to the townhouse I lived in with my mom and go up to some kid's bedroom and be he's expecting to go to some office complex. And, so having a photocopier, I was making my own magazines and stickers and all kinds of stuff that kids my age would have to be paying for. And so I just had free reign, I'm passing out stickers at school. They're getting plastered all over the place, So I had that. And when that became tedious, it was okay, well, if I release records now, I don't have to assemble them and cut the tapes. And so when I was, I put out a couple 7 inches of death metal bands, around early 1990, before I even had a driver's license. I had put out a couple of death metal records. The first couple were split label releases with a label called Relapse Records, which is actually a pretty huge metal label now. Yeah. Because we were friends from the tape trading and zines and all of that stuff. Unfortunately, things soured for me, and I had to abandon that. Just being a kid and child of divorce and family issues and such, it kind of sabotaged my whole thing. I originally wanted to be self-employed when I got out of high school. That was my plan. I don't ever want to have to work for somebody, but that's never totally happened. I'm still, slaving away to the man and doing what I can to do my thing, on the back end. But it graduated from doing a death metal zine and the records to doing a movie magazine called Shocking Images. And this was all again in the mid 90s. That was heavily Eurocult based, Lucio Fulci and Argento, I live and die by all that stuff. I'm covered in Fulci and Argento tattoos and Dolomite and all this kind of stuff. I literally wear my, loves on my sleeve, you've got, Devo and the Misfits. I mean, I even have an X rating on my arm, like, so it's like, it's in my blood. It's my DNA. And then I started doing the zine, and then the kind of like, the gray market videotape period back in the mid 90s, when before DVD was out, and started, doing that. And it blossomed into doing a full on mail order thing, which is actually an interesting story, because in the mid 90s, I worked for Tower Records, and we would get an employee discount. And I don't ever recall seeing anything in our, company policy that would determine what you did with the things that you bought on your company discount. So coincidentally, I was a buyer at the store. So what I would do is I would buy my stock, and leave it as understock at the store and put it online for sale. And then as I needed it, I just bought it at work on my discount and then mailed it out the next day, from home. So I had like a ton of stuff that was available to me. I mean, I may have been like the main source for like Goblin CDs in the mid 90s, those imports and stuff, because I could get them through work, nice. And with no front expenses. The boss would go by and go, "What do we have all this stuff down here for?" And I'd be like, "Don't worry about it," and I bought it all,
just keep walking.
Just look away, and we had a video distributor here in town as well. So it built up where I could just put all the new releases online and ready to order, and I would drive down the street and pick up my stock every week, and do that. And I did that for a few years, and, it was fun. It was a lot of work, but my profit margin was so small, it was hard for me to maintain. And this was also at the time when Anchor Bay was kind of starting up full speed, and, we're getting, VHS tapes and DVDs in the early image releases. Yeah. And so it was kind of like at the beginning of that, and that kind of fell apart. And then it's like, okay, well, what's next? And, I was working on my Rudy Ray Moore book, which we can kind of talk about, as well. And it blossomed into doing another zine called Film Fanatic. I'm a fan of like alliterations and kind of it was fan addict, so it was like a play on words. And I did that for 3 issues, and that kind of dissolved, just mostly because it's a ton of work, which luckily I had an editing partner, Nathan Pazant, like brother to me, who was, like I couldn't have done what I did on that without him, and a couple other writers doing reviews and things. And by the 3rd issue, it was, full glossy. And I think it was like Ingram or whoever the main, it might have even been Diamond, I don't remember. But one of the main magazine distributors decided that they would carry it. And they put it in their new release catalog, and then they come back and tell you how many they need. And it was like 100 issues. And I was like, really? Like, that's it?
Yeah.
100 issues is all that the nation would want out of, this. And that issue was a nice issue. It was like a Dune issue. It had like an amazing cover, and there was a bunch of stuff about Dune and, other things in there as well, cult stuff. And so I just got really disappointed by that. It was just like, really, that's all that I could get out of that. So that really deflated me. And then I was still working on the Rudy Ray Moore book. It was a 30-year project. And we can kind of go back to the beginning of that if you want to try to summarize. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stuff here. I'm probably forgetting things too. Even as a kid, when I was doing the punk rock tapes, I worked on a public access channel. We had like a punk rock show called Underground Sounds, where we would just record the local bands, and I did a commercial, like for my little punk rock tape label that 10 people in town probably saw, or whoever I told at school that, I'm going to be on TV tonight or whatever. But and then I was kind of in limbo. And then I started a bobblehead company called Cult Collectibles. And that was like my genius idea, that this is going to make me enough money to be able to publish my Rudy Ray Moore book. But of course, you start one project and it's a drain on your time, and it takes away from another thing, which is a lesson that I never, ever learn. And And so I started doing the bobbleheads, and I did 7 of them. And I'm always kind of disappointed in the level of support. And I think I'm making like the greatest thing on the face of the earth, and that's usually my core motivation is like, why doesn't that exist? I want that. Yeah. So I'm dumb enough to go make it and sit with a garage full of them for years on end, and I just wonder, like, what kind of, you get so it's kind of self-defeating. Like, what is it that I'm not doing correctly here? Like, what are people not connecting with? I always joke that if I was to be buried, my headstone would say, "Here lies the man that made all the cool stuff that nobody bought." It's kind of self-deprecating, but sometimes you feel like that. It's like, and one of my core philosophies is you have to support the things that you love, or they disappear.
Agreed.
And that requires cash. There's so much stuff I spend money on that I probably should not. I got piles of things that I'm never going to have time to look at or watch or read, but it exists, and I want it to be there I want it to exist for myself and for other people. Yeah. So I have to support it. So now I'm kind of like, okay, people, where's the reciprocity? Like, is the universe going to bring some of that, back towards me? But like the bobbleheads, if I could show you a couple of them,
please. Yeah.
They were really cool.
Looking back now, I really want to go back and get a whole series of them. They're freaking like really detailed. They're really nice.
So the idea originally started because there's a guy named Clint Weiler. He has a company called Agronautics. So Agronautics started doing punk rock bobbleheads, and he did like Gigi Allen and Milo from the Descendants and Joe Queer from the Queers, and and Devo and all this stuff. And I had mentioned to him, I said, hey, how about you do a Dolomite one? I could totally make that connection and make that happen for you. And he's like, well, I'm just sticking with music. He goes, why don't you do it? So, okay, yeah, I'll do it.
I guess so.
Yeah. So, I figured it all out. He just like, mentored me and said, here's where I go, and here's kind of the process, and, have at it. And, the first one I did was Black Devil Doll from the Lewis Brothers movie that they did, the totally offensive and whatever movie.
Very expensive VHS.
Yeah. It was a cool movie, and a fun thing to do. And then I did the Jaretta Demon doll, which was like her from Demons, and it had the little mask that I even licensed the mask from Sergio Stivoletti, who created that design. The couple of the ones that like I'm super proud of, I did this with Grindhouse releasing with Bob Murawski. This is basically the Beyond. This is Jill, who gets her head blown off in the movie, or her head caved in. So I'm 99.9% positive that this is the first, if not still the only bobblehead with 2 faces. So she's got the blood flood here. So if you're familiar with the movie, when she's in the hospital room, it looks like Slurpees, rolling down at her. So she's got that here, and you have the before, which is here. And then actually this pops off, and now you have the caved in, damaged head. So it's got a little magnet inside here in the black area, so it just attaches like that, and you can hardly even tell.
Yeah, that's really nice.
2 faces, and the box itself was the Book of Avon, and it had like a little opening flap that Stephen Romano, if you're familiar with him, did the artwork for, which was really cool. And I also, with Bob at Grindhouse, did Cat in the Brain. So I did Lucio Fulci himself, which
I love it.
Huge honor. Whether you like bobbleheads or not, I made the Fulci bobblehead. So yes. So this was cool. Was really excited to do that. These were all 1,000. They're all numbered on the bottom. And then I, of course, eventually did the Dolomite one.
Had to.
Which was this, which also has punching action. So, and then I stole that from Agronautics too, because he did a Keith Morris from the Circle Jerks, and he was pointing at his head like, think for yourself. And so I said, well, I can take that, and blatantly told Clint, hey, I'm going to steal your idea. At least I can make punching action on Dolomite. And this one was cool. And, another one that I was proud of too. And I only made 250 of these, but, I also did Jean Rollin.
Yeah.
So, that was my tribute to him. I ran his website for many years back in the 90s. And this one was really cool. And it also came with a film strip from Grapes of Death. I had a trailer that it was I believe it was an incomplete trailer that his son Sergey had, and he sent me the film, and I just chopped it up and put it in little envelopes, and that was a lot of fun. And then it just kind of like, it kind of ran its course.
Yeah.
And then I was more focused on getting the Rudy Ray Moore book going. And if you want, I can kind of.
Well, yeah. I mean, let's go with Rudy Ray Moore, because for those that don't know, Vinegar Syndrome had their time with the Rudy Ray Moore cycle. They went through, they put out 4 of his films, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, like right after that, Vinegar Syndrome seemed to be a little bit of the resurgence that got people interested in him again. And so Netflix commissioned this Dolomite Is My Name film. Eddie Murphy came back. You were involved a little bit of the stuff behind that. But man, before we get into all the Dolomite stuff, let's talk about this incredible book. This thing is great. Like, it's a really, really well-written book. You can tell, like, this is somebody's life had to go into this. It is so thoughtfully researched and put together. It is a really nice book. Again, I believe most of that was put out with Bob from Grindhouse, right? You worked on that for the release?
So it was a Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And I think I announced it on like Rudy's birthday, March of that year. And it was a month-long thing. And I had budgeted it out to about 1,200 books, and it was supposed to be paperback. And I was looking to get, I think it was $33,000, and people thought I was out of my mind. Me being stubborn, it had to be done a certain way. And it was, it's all or nothing when you're on Kickstarter. So, as crappy as it is to have to do everything on your own, there is a sense of pride when you've accomplished something, of course. And from day one, when I knew I was going to write this book and when I started it, in the back of my head, I always knew that the ultimate tribute to Rudy would be to do it myself, because he did all of his own stuff himself. Everything. So, how appropriate, would that be? Even though it was, grueling. But it was a 30-day Kickstarter. And it started out really, it starts out well. And then after a few days, maybe like 5 days or so, things start to slow down, and you automatically start panicking. It's like, wow, and you start, you're doing math every day. Like, I got X amount of days left in this amount, and I need to make this amount every single day. And then the next day it's like, okay, I need to make more money now every day, and it's just not coming in. So one thing that I will say to anybody out there who ever does anything on Kickstarter, don't wait till the last minute. Put your money in immediately. Get the momentum going, because if you don't, people just look at it and go, this isn't going to go anywhere. So why am I going to even bother? Whether or not they get charged or not is not the main purpose or their main focus. It's just like, I feel like I'm wasting my time if I do this. It's nothing's going to happen. So, it was horrific, to be perfectly honest with you. People told me I was out of my mind. Why do you need so much money? And, also at the same time, I mean, shouldn't I be able to make a couple bucks out of it? It wasn't going to, pay my mortgage for a year or anything like that. But I mean, I spent 30 years of my life working on this book, and, thousands and thousands of hours and tens of thousands of dollars, and on all the things that it took to do that. I should get a couple bucks out of it. And then you start, like, it's begging, it's cyber begging. You're going and you're sending, you're IMing everybody, people you don't even know, hoping that you can just get, something to go viral. I mean, I did like sports radio show interviews and anything I could get, just to, shock jock guys, trying to, read more. Yeah. Tell us something we don't know. It's horrible. I don't know if I said this already, but it was probably the third worst thing I've ever gone through in my life, besides divorce and buying a first house. You got to have a strong stomach if you're going to go, go with that. And then you see other projects that pop up and they're like funded in 3 days. And it's like, what am I missing here? But I pretty much in the first few days, I just said the hardback was a stretch goal. And then I just said, screw it. It should be a hardback anyway. And so I just said, it's now a hardback. So, put your money in. And I also was running a old school comedy label at the same time. That's another thing. I had a small like punk label, and that dissolved real fast. But I also had a comedy label that I was licensing old 70s comedy albums by like Leroy and Skillet, including LaWanda Page and others. Jimmy Lynch, who's in some of Rudy Ray Moore's movies.
Right.
I still have the licensing to those, and they're just on streaming. It makes pennies every month, but it's out there for people to see it. So given the downloads away was part of the add-ons that you could have, and I had a bunch of cool stuff. I also had tons of the Blu-rays that were out, so you could add those and CDs and LPs, and so I had a lot of stuff to include. You kind of feel like you're giving away the farm every time, just to get people to support. On top
of all the fees and all that too.
People don't realize that they're going to take 10% off the top. You also, your shipping's in there as well, and it costs thousands of dollars to ship all that stuff.
Yeah. Not to mention the man hours.
Right. So it got down to the wire, and it was getting really close. And I'm sitting there going, man, I'm like $5,000 away or $6,000 away, and I got like 2 days left. Even my wife is like, I'll pay for it. And I was like, no, if we pay for it, like it didn't happen. Right. There's got to be more than 700 Rudy Ray Moore fans out there. I mean, come on. So and every day I was just militantly promoting this. I was going to be devastated if it didn't go through. And then all of a sudden, I had an aunt who just was like, oh, here's the rest of the money that you need, to do this. I want you to achieve your dream. And it was like, oh my God, amazing. And then it was kind of funny because Bob from Grindhouse was like, well, now I don't have to pay for it, because Bob's a huge Rudy Ray Moore fan. Most people don't know this, but after he won his Oscar, they have like a backstage thank you cam where you can say whatever you want. And, he thanked Rudy Ray Moore and Duke Mitchell. Those were like his final thank yous. I think even today, Rudy Ray Moore is still thanked on every single Grindhouse release as well. So Bob was like, you have to make more. And I was like, well, what, I don't have the sales for it. I don't want a garage full of books. And I said, if you want them, you pay for them and you sell them. And he goes, okay. So he took 800, which made 2,000 the full amount, and it's I am proud of that book. That's if there's one thing in my life that is like, you put that in my, obituary, like that is
the legacy.
I didn't care how long it took. I discovered Rudy when I was 17. A friend of mine called me and said, dude, you have to see this crazy movie. I said, okay. I drove over. He passed the movie out of his bedroom window. I didn't even turn the car off. I just grabbed the movie, went home, and I watched Dolomite, and just boom, just what in the world is this? You've never seen anything like this. And I just immediately was like, who is this guy? What is this? Right. And you there's no frame of reference at all. I have no idea about anything other than just what I just saw. I don't even really realize that he's a comedian, that he has albums out, in other films, and he was a singer. And, there's hints to that, of course, in the movie. And if you watch the credits and stuff, but it was like, okay, well, where do I start?
Stuff with somebody like him. He was a force.
It's 1991 again. Yeah. I'm an old fart. You couldn't just use Google, and I started finding little references to him in things. like movie review guides, and there'd be like a really negative review of something that he did in like Shock Cinema, saying like he was like a bloated ego trip or something, and all this kind of stuff. And yes, Rudy had an ego. And so within, I think about a year, someone called me and said, "Hey, I found this address. Maybe it's Rudy Ray Moore's." And so I wrote to it, and I was doing my little Shocking Images zine back then. And I just wrote a letter and said, "Would you be interested in doing an interview?" And he wrote back and just said yes, and had like his business card in there with his phone number. And I knew nothing. The first interview that I did with him was embarrassing, because I didn't know anything.
Right.
I mean, I was, I think I was 19 when I did that interview. So 2 years after I discovered him, I'm running around work going, I just talked to Rudy Ray Moore. Like I just was touched by God, and everyone's like, who is that? And it's like, dude, this is like the greatest day of my life. And it morphed into like, because I was so frustrated not being able to get information on him and his career, and he was still performing and doing little club events and stuff. And I was like, well, how about I just start a website for you, Rudy? And, that's how RudyRayMoore.com started. And he didn't even know, Rudy, as most technologically advanced, had a fax machine in the room at his retirement community. Like he had no concept of computers and such. And he was actually in town, and I brought him over to my crappy little apartment, and I showed him the website. And, I actually have a contract from him that says I'm the only official Rudy Ray Moore website,
Nice.
which I think is funny. So I'm showing it to him, and he's just not understanding. And I just said, think of this like a digital book. This is our table of contents here. And when we click on this, it takes us to this chapter, and vice versa. And he was like, okay, whatever, you do what you're doing. And so I would maintain that and put news and things up there. And then I was like, Rudy, I want to write you need to have a book about yourself. And there was something that had come out. It was basically like a long interview that was turned into like a booklet. I wouldn't even consider it a book. So it was like, 20 pages worth of a transcribed interview, and then a bunch of his routines transcribed. Right. Nothing of any real, to me, significant substance. It was all the same stuff. And I started to learn that Rudy would just repeat the same stories. And he said, well, there's already a book about me. And I said, I don't consider that a book. That doesn't tell me. It doesn't talk about it doesn't talk about anything really. And so he was like, okay. I just basically like beat him down until he agreed to do it. And then, so I just started, trying to interview him. And I realized really quickly that approaching him like you're doing an interview was just automatically like exhausting for him. Right. He didn't want, he
was put off to it.
Yeah. So I just learned to just call him and just talk. I'd ask him the questions, but it wouldn't have this like, we're doing an interview,
Wasn't serious.
Yeah. And, I said, Rudy, I'm just going to record, for my notes and stuff. And okay. And so, we'd talk and talk and talk, and he'd give me a lot of the same canned answers that he was giving out in all the interviews. Cause again, everybody else interviewing him didn't know anything about him either, other than the same thing that they had read over and over and over again. So they're just asking him the same questions. And he's never even talking about all of his like singing career and stuff from the 50s and 60s and all the 45s that he had and all of these things. And so when I finally like started getting all those things, some days he would be very talkative, but most of the time he'd be grumpy and uncooperative. And I also learned that I kind of had to force him, And so I keep asking him, and I'd ask him, and he would tell me things, and he would tell me lies too. And, the whole purpose of doing the website was to put accurate information out there, because I was frustrated on not having access to anything that was accurate. And so the first time we spoke, he gave me his birth date, and that was a lie already. So I put that up on the website because that's what he, in his bio.
Straight from his mouth.
Yeah. That's what Dolomite told me. And then as I started getting more into it, he was like, and I was in the military at this time, and I'm like, okay, now hold on, Rudy. If you were in the military at this age and this date, there's no way you were born,
Right.
So he was, fudging the numbers, and then he'd get mad and go, I don't know why this is important, and it's like, well, all of this is important, Rudy. It's, to document your life. And so sometimes he'd get angry at me, and he'd just go off. He'd just, I don't know why I don't want to talk about this. And, all this stuff gives me so much pain. And he had a lot of pain from the struggles of what he did. Some days he would be very proud. He could be like, I spent $110,000 or $140,000 and made Dolomite, and it made millions. He'd be proud of that. And then there'd be days where he would be, he didn't want to, like, he was embarrassed that it cost $140,000. Because people look at that and that's like, dude, that's chump change. Like, that's not even a catering bill on some movies, So he'd yell at me for a while. And then after he ran out of steam, I'd really get the truth out of him. It's like I had to wear him down, and then he would open up, I mean, we sat and had weird conversations. I don't say weird in they were crazy, but he was a fan of Bela Lugosi. Like, I have a Bela Lugosi related tattoo, and we talk about, oh, you like Bela Lugosi, and and we would talk about race related things, and because I mean, I'm a scrawny white guy with a bald head and tattoos, and people have accused me of being like a skinhead and all this other stupid stuff in my life, and and he would say, like, he would ask me about stuff like that. People judge you, and I'm like, well, people judge me all the time. They're judging, everybody's judging everybody, unfortunately, And then this kind of goes along with that, where he was doing a performance one time, and I was in the audience, and Rudy never really performed on stage. He would walk the crowd, and he'd get in people's faces, and he'd tell jokes and put the microphone in their face, and, like, really, like, embarrass women and all kinds of stuff. Like, he came over and he said a joke on me, and, something vulgar. And it was like, oh, Rudy Ray Moore just capped on me. Like, hell yeah. But it was funny because I'm sitting there with like a couple other white guys. One dude's got dreadlocks and he's covered in tattoos, on his neck and everything. And I've got tattoos on my neck, and you kind of feel like the stairs because we're the only white guys in the crowd. And I don't know if Rudy sensed that or anything, but he just breaks out in the middle of the performance and goes, "Hey, does everybody here know my friend Mark? He runs my website and all this stuff." And all of a sudden I was like, "What up, homie?" Like, everybody, like, after the performance, it was like hanging around Rudy's merch table, was like, "Dude, man, how do you know Dolomite?" It's like this crazy idea that this, white dude, I have a shirt on, like a Rudy Ray Moore shirt, and somebody be like, "Man, what do you know about Dolomite?" I'd be like, "You'd be surprised." Like, I can call him right now if you want to talk to him, but it just, it went on and on and on. And I couldn't get all the details that I wanted. And I also knew that there's so much in his life that needs to be covered. And writing a book is I mean, I can't explain how draining and how difficult. There was many times I burst out in tears. I wanted to give up, and it can destroy you, especially the way I work, which is unfortunate because I will spend hours doing research to write 2 sentences. And that's why it took 30 years, because you can't just, especially if you're writing someone's life story, I'm not going to try to speculate on things. Yeah. I'm not going to try to, maybe I'm missing a segue into something else. Like, let me just make up something here, or sometimes you read books and it's, and I just go, man, this is such garbage. This is not, it'll be like, it'll have some passage where it's like the guy's walking, the subject of the book is walking down the street and he's talking to himself in his head. And it's like, dude, you're just making all this stuff up. This is not something, this is not a dramatization. You're kind of like adding this fictitious,
Right.
portion to it. So that always irritated me. And I wanted every single word in that book to count. I didn't want any superfluous crap in there. I wasn't trying to fill pages. But you have to also, I'm not from the South, I'm not someone who is burdened by racial discriminations and things and all of the stuff that he had to go through. I don't know exactly what the Chitlin Circuit is, so there's so many things so to do this, you have to go, okay, where was he born? What was going on at that time when he was born? What was the cultural environment in the area he was at? What are all the things that he had to experience? When he went here, what was going on there? Okay. Right. He was performing at a club. Okay. So what is insignificant about, what is significant about that club? So you have to, tons of footnotes where the reason why the Birdland is famous is this. The reason why, this R&B singer, you have to put all these things because people aren't going to know those. You could just rattle off that he worked with this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. But what's the significance? Yeah, everybody's going to know James Brown, but also what's the significance with him and James Brown? Like, where do they really fit together? So everything had to have definitive context for me. And that is grueling.
Especially with somebody that's an unreliable narrator, especially with somebody that didn't have much reference out there before you even started on the project. So
and he died in 2008. So the 2/3 of the time I'm working on this book or more, he's passed. But the thing that made it what it was, other than taking 30 years, was the fact that I started it so early, and I was lucky enough to interview pretty much everybody that was in his inner circle. Most of them have all passed now, unfortunately, and I became very close friends with a lot of them too. Even so much as staying at their house when I'm in town, and it was amazing just to meet these people. And having all of that was the key. And especially when Rudy passed, I go back and re-interview those people, and the dialogue would be different. So they would be more open to truths and things. And I think the reason why that was is that Rudy always brought his friends in to do all of his projects. And I think that they didn't want to ruffle Rudy's feathers.
Right.
So there may be a chance, Rudy may get another movie rolling. Rudy always somehow makes things happen. Maybe I can be a part of that film or whatever that project is. So I got more truths out of people. And I want to vent on something here, if you don't mind.
Of course.
It's something that just really, really angers me. And some of it is just my own fault because I've always felt that I was Rudy's protector. I'm probably going to get emotional. He's a very important person to me. And one of I almost said a bad word. Oh my God, we're live. One of the crappy things that's been happening.
You can say shit, by the way.
Okay. All right. One of the shitty things that's been happening since he passed, is, people commenting that he was gay. Okay. So what? I knew that. I wanted to kind of be the one to break that news, because I felt that I would be the appropriate, the way that I would do it would be appropriate, not judgmental or anything like that. And in my book, it's in the introduction. Let's just get this out of the way. So what? Right. And since he's passed, there's been all these really ridiculous, the secret Rudy Ray Moore took to his grave, these really just garbage clickbait things on YouTube and stuff. And there was one, my Google notifications, I get them all day long, Rudy Ray Moore and whatever my interests are and what I'm doing. And so I'll click on them. And for the longest time, I listen to these podcasts and I get angry. I'd be like, this is just so inaccurate. Like, and it just make me mad. And, I can't control everybody's comments, and it's like I fought so hard to get all the accurate information, and there's people out there just spewing garbage. But this one that came up the other day, I didn't listen to it, but their graphic that they use on their for the video on YouTube is a AI generated photo of Rudy kissing another man. It's just so disrespectful, that people would stoop to that for some stupid clickbait, and I mean, it makes me furious, but there's nothing I could do about it.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm going to get emotional.
The amount of respect in the book alone is so easy for somebody to Google and do some research, that there's now, some compiled stuff out there. You've been one of the harbingers of some of this information with this website and with some of the actual other film historians that have gone through the trouble of making sure that his legacy is saved in a way that's not fucking AI generated. That like this bullshit it's ruining so many different things.
It's, I was telling my wife, and, I'm like, I just want to go on their comments and just lay into them. But, I mean, I'm better than that, even though I'm venting right now, but it's just like,
send me a link. I'm not better than that.
all right. I didn't bother to listen to it. And he even says in the description, like, basically they said everything in here would be just total bullshit, and it's just, please people be better,
Please.
So anyways, but I had all those interviews with everybody, and I was in, I was officially a brother to,
one of them.
I was an honorary brother. I was brought into the fold, and was told everything. But it took, part of the reason why it took so long was just because I had to have every bit of information. I'm not necessarily a fan of third version, newly revised or whatever. It was like people would say, how can you claim to be Rudy's biographer when you've never put the book out? Well, it's coming. I used to, my catchphrase was, I'd rather it be right than rushed.
It's got to be exhaustive.
Yeah. So, and there were things that had to be completed. There were certain areas of information that I didn't have access to that later I did. So I was able to get those final pieces. And then, you mentioned Dolomite Is My Name. I was the historical consultant on that. Scott Alexander and Larry Karaszewski, both big Rudy Ray Moore fans, of course. I'd already interviewed them for my book, and they knew, what I had been doing all this time. And to them, I guess it was a no-brainer. They were just like, we have to, bring Mark on. He's got everything, And they joke in some of their interviews and stuff, that we had this guy that we could just call and say, hey, what kind of car was Rudy driving in 1975?
Right.
Okay, thanks. And that was basically like a lot of what it was. So I gave them my book in progress. And they would use that as reference. And part of me was kind of scared, like, am I letting this go too soon? One of my fears, and maybe this is a reality, is that that once people saw Dolomite Is My Name, they thought they knew everything about Rudy, and there's no reason to buy a book. And that's just this much of his life. And I was getting kind of pressured when the movie was getting ready to be released. The book needs to come out now. And I was kind of like, but I'm not finished with it. The final chapter needs to be Dolomite Is My Name.
Yeah.
That's the pinnacle, so I kind of like sent these, like promo packets to these literary agencies, which is kind of a joke. They basically tell you, even some of they basically say, send us your submission and don't ever contact us again. If we care, we'll contact you. It's like, there's no follow up, no nothing. And so like Scott and Larry were like, dude, this, strike while the fire's hot, And so I kind of went and did a little bit of that, and nothing came of it. And I was like, fine, that's fine with me, because it wouldn't be done. I would feel like I compromised, just to kind of cash in, and unfortunately, money's never been a motivator. That's it's not my motivating factor. So
I mean, we just talked about this. You do everything possible through every single one of these projects to make sure that it's yours, that it's right, that it's the way that you want it, that you've seen it through from the beginning to the end as much as you can. And yeah, you deserve to see it through, especially for something you've given so much of your life to.
Yeah. So, I mean, the movie came out and I was very impressed with the movie. And it was funny too, because, I'm so detail oriented. My wife and I were down in Southern California in the area, and we stopped by Scott and Larry's office, and they let us read the script. We couldn't take a copy, so we sat in their office and read it, and they went in the other room and then came out and sat on the couch and, well, what do you think? And I was immediately like, well, it's supposed to be 1970 right here, and you're talking about Deep Throat. Deep Throat was 1972. And they're like, Mark, there's a lot of stuff we got to cover here, so we got to kind of intermingle, and I'm so focused on the small details. It took me a while to get out of that frame of mind. And I will say that Netflix was amazing to me. I'm a nobody, on their scale. But because of Scott and Larry, they brought me in to consult, and they use my material for reference. They were amazing. I was able to go down on the set. I was there during the opening sequence when they're in the record store, and he's selling people stuff, and met Snoop Dogg and met Eddie, and Wesley Snipes was there, and little old me, and they're giving me a headset, and I'm sitting right next to Craig Brewer at the monitor while we're watching. Dude, seriously, I'm nobody.
Awesome.
I got no business sitting here. And, Craig's showing me, like, in between setups, he's like, hey, yelling to somebody like, hey, put on the monitor, like what we had the other day. And so he's showing me these clips, and he's telling me, yeah, I was thinking about for the intro, we could do like a swish pan. And I'm like, okay, we're talking to Eddie Murphy about 8-track tapes and Mr. Rogers. Right. That Mr. Rogers documentary had just come out, and Eddie was in that. It's just like, I'm in another world over here. It's bizarre. So they were super, super cool, and then when the movie was done, they flew me down to LA. I had a private screening in the Netflix theater, just me. I sat they put me at this table, and they had this video conference between New York and LA, and they're asking me all these questions and kind of getting a feel for some like legal things that they might have to maneuver through, and like what my opinions are, because I know the people that are potentially litigious to them, they're kind of like
affected by it.
And again, I'm just a little old me, and I'm having this video conference with Netflix New York and whatnot. So, I saw the movie, and I actually I started crying during the film. I was laughing my ass off, honestly. And I think I lost it. The scene when, Eddie's doing the like, is there any angle that we could shoot this that looks, real? And no, there's not, and I just was like, oh my God, like this is so much better than I expected it to be. There were still some things I was kind of like, well, that's maybe not the correct, impersonation of somebody or whatnot. And I had to get over that stuff too. Because you ultimately have to realize that, this isn't a documentary. It's a biofilm. So there's going to be liberties taken. And some people were like, well, I had kind of someone who worked with Rudy was like, why didn't they get a hold of me? I worked with him for years. I know how he holds his fork.
Right.
Like I know every detail, and it's like, no one cares about that. Like it's not about that. And the fact that Eddie Murphy played Rudy, and people say, well, it didn't really play theatrically, so it's not a real movie or whatever. It's only streaming, but it did play theatrically. I think I saw it 5 or 6 times because they were trying to get Oscar, an Oscar,
as they should have. Yeah,
they should have, absolutely. I lost my train of thought because I was still thinking about the Oscars.
You're talking about somebody else saying that they should have been there and
yeah. But you have to realize now that as that movie was, it put Rudy Ray Moore's name in the world's mouth. You had USA Today and talking about it. You had Ellen DeGeneres talking about it. It was every single talk show. Everyone was talking about Rudy Ray Moore. That movie was subtitled and translated into like 7, 8, 9, 10, 20 different languages through Netflix. It was seen all around the world. They don't put out, viewing figures. I wouldn't be surprised if that movie was worldwide 100 million times. Yeah. That never would have happened if it was just a theatrical film. And even when it became, if there was a physical media, so everything happened the way it was supposed to. I always had a mental vision of the way it needed to be. It needed to be, like these things had to fall in line. There had to be like reissues of his stuff that was done properly. And, I was involved and did the commentaries on all the Vinegar Syndrome releases. Worked on the extras with them. Great. Love Vinegar Syndrome. Who doesn't? And then I was like, and it needs to have like a bio show. And they did like I forget what the Unsung Hollywood on TV One. So I was on that show. As Rudy Ray Moore's biographer, the only white guy on the show. I even made the trailer. So when you watch the commercial, you have this white guy at the end going, the funny story about that, one of my coworkers at one point had walked up to me at work and said, "Hey, do you have a brother?" And I said, "No, why?" And he said, "Well, I saw some guy on TV that looked like you, only fatter." Oh, you saw the Unsung episode about Rudy Ray Moore. Well, that was me. What do they say? It adds 10 pounds. So I guess it does. And then I also thought and then a biofilm needs to be made, and then my book would come out as the, final piece of that puzzle. And it did. Not that I was like the sole reason why those happened in that order, but, my patience with everything kind of like played out the way I thought it needed to be. And, right now I'm trying to determine, because the 2,000 copies of the hardback have sold out. So I'm not sure what the next steps are. And again, it would not be some updated and revised version. There's probably like 3 typos in there and a couple dates of people that have passed since the book was originally released. So maybe I just need to kind of try to see if I can find a publisher to do like a mass market version, because it really is. I don't care. Rudy would say, I'm not conceited. I'm merely convinced that this is the greatest biography of all time. It's right. I mean, a lot of people have told me that as well. Like people said it was like a textbook, but not dry. It's informative. It's a history lesson. You're going to get so much more out of it than just Rudy Ray Moore's life.
Really well made, really well put together. Really,
thank you.
Respectfully chosen photographs, even, which it doesn't always happen in books like this. A lot of times it's like the most well-known pictures, and in many situations, like the real fans don't want to see that shit. We've been seeing them for the last 30 years. We want to see like very specific photos that'll be there. Yeah, you nailed it. The book is great. I mean, long before I knew you, I knew I had to have this, because Rudy Ray Moore is, as we're getting in the chat, Rudy Ray Moore is a legend. Like, genuinely, everything about him, everything he's done. The 4 films that came out through Vinegar Syndrome are some of their most important releases they've done, I think. And it's just such a unique person to get this amount of love. And honestly, the fact that we can look back in the last 15 years and that he's gotten the 4 releases from Vinegar Syndrome and the movie and the book is astonishing that any of those would happen. But the fact that they all happened is a massive legacy. I love it. Yeah. And it's just a testament to his tenacity, I've always related to that in him. You gotta will it into existence. You just do it.
You find a way to get it done, no matter what the no matter what the cost. So hopefully there's more life to the book. I was able to get it into like Harvard and I think Princeton, and I sent it to it might even be in Yale. I don't remember all the colleges, but I donated copies to like UCLA and stuff for their like African American history wings and things like that, and it was accepted at several of those places. So I mean, I wanted it to be used as a reference, a cultural reference, and hopefully it doesn't get discounted because a white guy wrote it. So
I mean, it's sad, but that is the thing. Like a lot of times for some people, that is genuinely, it's a barrier to even have the conversation.
Yeah. I mean, I've come across people who have just generalized that, if you weren't there, you don't know. And it's kind of like saying, okay, well, the guy that wrote the biography on George Washington wasn't his neighbor, you've just discounted pretty much every piece of, half of the data and literature, in existence, but I tried to turn over every rock twice. I revisited things over and over and over again, because once I had new context, things changed. And so you had to make sure, like, oh, whoops, I made a mistake here. Or I've got this out of chronology. And the kind of the great thing about Rudy's career was that it easily was broken up into decades. So I was able to just do like, the 50s and the 60s and then the 70s. And so that part worked out really well. And the details I have on the making of all of his films, I mean, it is the absolute N word on Rudy Ray Moore. Nobody can touch that book, and it's, I mean, I've got Rudy's head, like right here,
he's probably always very,
he's over here. I mean, this is kind of like a Rudy Ray Moore room on this side of my room here. But go ahead.
One of the other big things that we can see, we should probably, we're an hour into this. I think I've said Ultra Flesh Archives once. No. I just, the big thing, I mean, the word archive, it is such an important word that we don't have enough focus on in 2026, because so many people take a lot of what they have access to at that moment absolutely for granted. Mm-hmm. And that, depending on how old you are, depending on what you have had your life experience be able to be subjected to, you may not even understand that there's things that you will not even comprehend is out there, let alone needs to be archived. And so you've done that for Rudy Ray, you've done that for Fulci, you've done that for all these people that you've done, website maintenance for even bobbleheads, is to memorialize some of these people. And now, like, Ultra Flesh Archives is such a big part of this, because it is such an undersung corner of the world and entertainment that is something that a lot of people like kind of act like they want to forget. But the reality is this affected a shit ton of people. So what is Ultra Flesh Archives, and what are the loops behind them? What are loops? Well,
loops is just a generalized term for small gauge films. It could be 16 millimeter, it could be 8 millimeter Super 8s. The term generally means that the old peep show arcade machines, the films would be set up as a loop where they would just play in constant rotation, so that they didn't have to come and like rewind the film and start it over. People would put their nickels or quarters or whatever it was in there, and they get a certain amount of time, hopefully something entertaining, if you know what I mean, popped up. But then the tease was always like, oh, I got to put more quarters in because there's going to be something good coming up next. So loops is just a general term for that. Essentially, I mean, I have one here. This is on a commercialized, you would buy them. A lot of times they just come in a little white box. Like this one right here, I got a few days ago. It just says 206 and it's a Super 8. I don't know anything else about it yet. You're going to have it on a little reel, and it's film, and I'll try to summarize the origins of this. Probably, I'm going to say maybe 15 years ago. It's kind of my wife's fault. I'm going to blame her for all of this. One day she just was like digging through, like I had one box of, dirty magazines in my closet. Not that I was hiding them or anything, but that's just where they were stored. And so she got this idea, and she started cutting up some of them, and she plastered our bathroom with pictures from men's magazines. It became kind of this notorious porno bathroom, which has evolved over the years, which we still have, but now it's more classy. We have a working condom machine in there. We have a shower curtain that has like people in sex positions on it, and it's a very I guess we'll say sex positive bathroom. We've had people come work on the house, and they'll be like, "Can I use the bathroom?" And we'll say, "Do you want the G-rated bathroom or the X-rated bathroom?" And they what do you mean? Well, take your pick,
Right.
So that's become kind of a showpiece of our house. Our house is set up like a gallery. We've got adult posters framed in the hallways and all over the place, and
Like an archive. Look
yeah,
at that.
yeah. And so she was doing the plastering the bathroom, and then I just I was kind of like, well, let's go buy some more magazines, and I'm everything I do is rooted in nostalgia, and so I just started like finding people on Craigslist that were selling collections and stuff, and it was actually really sweet. If this even sounds odd, we would go and find stuff on Craigslist and go over to people's houses and buy their it would be like their dad's collection. We've had people that like their uncle was in hospice and they were trying to liquidate his stuff, and we would show up and we would tell them that we're not dealers, we're here because we want to preserve this stuff. So I hope that gives you some solace. And a lot of places, one woman's husband had died, and she said he would be so happy to know that you guys are holding this.
Yeah.
And that was a great score because we found like a handwritten sex ransom note in there, in their stuff. So it was like, hopefully they're having some fun doing some role play, and we just happened to get like the ransom note. So it's the fun things that you find in that type of stuff. So I cherish that. That's like something cool that you found along the way. And then it just kind of like we would buy things, and I would buy stuff on eBay, and we'd go take 2-3 hour road trips to buy people's stuff out and buy it in bulk. And one thing that we don't pay for, and people would always wonder why, it was like, I say, I don't pay for Penthouse, Playboy, and Hustler. And they go, well, why? I say, because everybody has them. Yeah, it's everywhere. There's nothing rare, like everyone has a garage full of at least, Playboy for sure. And then people would just go, here, take them. And they'd give us boxes of them, and then we'd end up like liquidating them ourselves. But so the magazine portion started, to compile. And at this point now, I'm sure I have at least 8,000 magazines, well over 100 boxes of them, magazine boxes on racks and everything, and labeled and all of that. And I started kind of getting interested in the loops as well, but was a little bit reluctant because, and this is the challenge that I face, producing these and restoring these now, they all look like crap. Half the time it was so dark, you couldn't tell what was going on. They were so damaged. And so, I kind of believed that that's how they looked. And it was just like, this is kind of garbage. Like I can't see what's going on. So how am I going to enjoy, the action? And, and I met somebody online, and he had a big collection, and he was like, no, dude, you gotta, give it a chance. And so, I got a projector and a handful of loops from him. And I was like, okay, well, these don't look like crap. And I realized it was just the way that people were doing transfers, and the methods that they were using. So I'm still finishing my Rudy Moore book. I'm still doing bobbleheads and all this kind of stuff, but this is kind of like percolating in the back of my mind. Like someday I'm going to do this, and once I completed the Rudy project, what little money I had left over from, doing the movie and the book, was my little, investment into my film restoration equipment and programs. And, as at this point now, I've got easily probably 11,000 loops. About 3,000 or 4,000 of those are duplicates. So I think I'm coming right in at around 7,500 individual titles. And I just kept thinking, like, I need to do something with this stuff. You know, it can't just sit here. And I was so disappointed in how it was being presented. And then, so, you know, I started out with the crappiest of equipment too. I was like, well, let me see what all this is. And so, you know, you can buy these little tiny things for $300 or $400 on Amazon. And you know what, those are absolutely perfect if you just want to be able to see, you know, grandma and grandpa, you know, and birthday home
a few times, yeah,
you know, that are about, like, that look good at about this big on your screen, but you blow them up anymore and they're just pixelized and you know, the definition is gone. So, you know, I tried all those. I tried doing like the telecine where you have, like, you know, a projector pointing into a camera, you know, and that's decent. But I wasn't satisfied with that. So I ultimately just, you know, my wife always is the one who says, if you're going to do it right. And so she kind of gives me that extra, you know, kick in the ass to, you know, dude, you know what you need to do. So do it. So I always kind of use her as like the final QC, because she'll go, are you satisfied with this? And if I'm like, she go, well, why, you know, get satisfied with it. Like, do, you know, if there's something that you didn't do it. So we bought the transfer equipment, and, you know, I paid for the restoration software, you know, and I guess the part of the reason why no one's doing this is because it is not cheap,
right?
You know, for the equipment, just generally speaking, for what I've spent on equipment, you know, you need computers, you're going to need a ton of hard drive space and backups and you know, multiple computers and the software. I could have bought a very nice car, you know, for what I've invested in this. That's just for the equipment and stuff, not the collection itself. You know, and so I spent probably about 2 years just messing around, trying to figure out how to do this. You know, it's not like I'm an expert in this. I didn't take any schooling or go to college for any of this.
Right.
It was just a matter of, you know, trial and error. You know, first, of course, there's a lot more error than success. You know, you go on YouTube and you find somebody who's got a video about white balance, and you start there, and, you know, you work your way through it. And, you know, everything I do is still an experiment and a, you know, a learning, you know, time. Each film, of course, has different needs. Some just can't be restored. You might get something where, I find a lot of stuff that there's manufacturing issues as well. You know, they just, you know, there might be something that, like, I was trying to do one recently, and it had this throughout the whole movie. It would have like 4 or 5 consecutive frames with just giant scratches through, you know, and you knew that it was on the negative. So a little bit about how, like, the software restores is basically they pulls pixels from neighboring frames. So if you have one frame that has, like, let's say the top corner is, you know, a big black blob, it'll pull that section from one of the frames on the other sides to fill that space in. But if you have 3 or 4 or 5 frames consecutive, you don't have
it's a mess.
The data, you know, to kind of pull from, and you might be able to get something okay, but then you get these kind of wonky, you know, where a shoulder doesn't match up, and you see like a weird jerk and all this kind of stuff. So it gets difficult. And me being stubborn too, I won't name names, but there's someone in the industry that does something similar, and their comment was that there's nothing that you can do with these films. And basically what they do is they transfer, and then they do a little bit of color correction, but there's no, like, actual restoration.
All today.
Yeah. And actually someone commented on a Facebook post today and mentioned that those specific ones and called them dog shit. So I'm quoting someone else, so I'll let them speak for that. And I kind of felt the same way. So what could I do that was better? You know, I'm not satisfied with what I'm seeing, so how do I make it better? And so I just do it. I take the time, you know, there's been times I've spent like an entire week working on, you know, 8 minutes of footage.
Yeah.
part of my problem is that my perfectionism and my OCD, and I'm a little bit too heavy-handed on the corrections, to be honest. Like the cleanup, I want to leave some of that damage in there. I want to leave some dust and things, because I don't want it to look too clean. I mean, these are dirty movies, by the way.
They're not meant to be glossy,
right? And there is only so much you can do with them. I made this little prop here. I kind of wanted to show this, and this is and then I'll get into some of the releases. This is an example. Let me see if you can actually see this. Okay, so this right here is what would be a 35 millimeter frame, the white. Okay, just from a leader. So you got the 4 perforations. That's the width and everything of a 35 millimeter. Now this in the center. Let me see if I can get in there more. In the center there is an 8 millimeter frame. So I put the lines on the sides there to show the actual size of the frame itself, because that little section over here is where the perforations are.
Right.
So that you don't get visual, there's no visual information over there. So that is how small an 8 millimeter frame is in comparison to 35 millimeter. So there's not a lot of visual information there. You can get, I guess, close-ish to like full high definition. I would imagine that Super 8 you probably do get high definition. Everything I do is transferred in high definition, and I've always had a kind of an issue with you buy a release and some of them will say transferred in high definition, but it's on DVD. So what? Like that means nothing now. Like you should have just transferred it in standard definition, because that's what I'm essentially getting.
Downgraded it.
Right. So I didn't want to downgrade. So everything I'm doing, at least right now, because I can get a high definition quality from it, will be on Blu-ray. Now, with the understanding too that, again, with that microscopic, I mean that frame is only like, I think it's something like 3.3 millimeters tall by 4.5 wide. So it's not even 8 millimeter.
It's nothing.
So, so it's tiny. The Super 8s are bigger because they have smaller perforation,
right?
And so they made the frame a little bit bigger. So you get better resolution, and you can often tell immediately between what's an 8 millimeter and a Super 8 when you look at my transfers. But people say like, oh, do it in 4K, and it's like there's no point to that. There's not 4K worth of data in there. There's not enough pixels to get to 4K. You can transfer it, but you're mostly just like increasing the grain at that point. You're just making it dirtier in a way. So essentially, when I do these, I transfer them in HD. Sometimes I've done them in 2K. And then you just realize and also if you're doing them in 4K, all you're doing is just draining your computer, your system. Is everything's taking twice as long to do now for no additional picture quality increase. So there's no point to that. I do stress absolutely 100%. No AI in any way, shape, or form, other than with an asterisk. The restoration software uses AI to interpolate between frames and stuff, but it's not like
there's no generative AI.
Yeah, I'm not going to Topaz and just putting it in, because those are a joke. You can see those and they're too smooth and they look like garbage. And I really absolutely hate it when people like, oh, I just upgraded this to HD. The information was never there to begin with, so you're not creating anything. Yeah, so that drives me nuts too. So. I try not to make them too smooth. I mean, obviously there's a lot of noise in there, so I want to do a little bit of noise reduction. I want to keep the grain, and I try to bring out the colors as much as I can. But again, people have to understand that this isn't 70 millimeter. It's not going to look like Avatar. This is, but also at the same time, if I were to show you, and I haven't really put this to task, of what's been out and what I'm doing, and it's night and day. I'll stand by that. I believe that the restorations and the quality of what I'm doing is far superior to what anybody's done at this point. And that's
one of those done for you. We should get like a restoration demo reel done of a couple of these things.
Yeah. And so part of what I do on each release, and I only have 2 releases, and I'll show you those in a second, with a ton more to come. But I always will be putting a restoration featurette on there where I show like the raw scan next to the restored frame, and then below it I put the final color corrected version, so you can see. It may just be a short clip, could be like 10 seconds or whatever. Yeah, but and I think that's part of the challenge that I have is first, because I mean myself, I was like, these look like crap. Like, why would I want to? Right. Why would I want to watch them? So now I have to convince people that they're not going to look like crap. I have to convince people that these are valid, because I do believe that these are valid historical documents of human sexuality and film. Maybe I'm one of the small handful that believe that. Me and Casey Scott, long live Loops. Love you, Casey.
Shout out Casey.
Yeah. So like, it's an uphill battle, which I tend to fight on everything that I do. And I'm hoping that just the momentum that I'm building, even when I didn't have releases out, I still had a heavy social media presence. I was posting pictures of magazines, and that's another thing. I try to post things from my collection, and I'm trying to show that it's not just someone pulled a screen grab off of somewhere online. Like I have this magazine. Here's boxes and boxes of them. So maybe some of that's ego, whatever, because it's like, haha, look what I have. It's not really that, but like. I have this stuff. This stuff exists. Like I'm trying to hold on to this. I cherish this stuff. I'm trying to preserve it. Ultimately, and this is a major pipe dream, and I don't have any idea how I would ever accomplish this. But I mean, I would like to have every magazine that I have scanned. And also like like searchable PDF versions, and of course, if you could make like a gigantic database of great. Yeah, I mean, just the thought of that just. I mean, oh my God, and the same thing with all the films that I have of being able to get them all transferred, which is a huge task. I mean, the releases that I've done, hundreds of hours have been spent on those, and I do it until it's done. And, I hope people appreciate it. I hope people, will support those of you who are already supporting me. Like, I mean, just, I can't thank you enough. I need more. I need more support. I'm a microscopic little company here trying to do this, but I have big dreams and big goals with this. So, I need to sell more so I can buy more data storage and transfer more, and keep the cycle going. So let me talk about my releases here.
Please, let's hear about Leslie Winston.
All right. So the first release I did was called Wild Heart. It's the Leslie Winston collection. These are all classy. There's no nudity here because I try to think. I like to keep things. I have respect for this stuff. So you're not going to find vulgar titled releases, which is fine, but you might see that in the inside when I'm referencing the actual titles of the films. But overall, this is I have the utmost respect for all of these people, including my subjects. So Leslie's release is called Wild Heart. The reason why it's called that is because that's how she describes herself. So what I do with this is my deluxe version. So I've got a spot gloss, side load sleeve, all that's the goodies there. And then the disc itself, if you can see without the, nice and classy.
Great design.
Genuinely
keeping, great design.
Little, replication of a film there with little screen grabs from the movies and stuff. Of course, these are all, full frame, but enhanced for 16.9 because that's the framing that they're filmed in. This is actually the deluxe signature version. So when I do deluxe editions for the first few that are specifically star related for the actress, the first 50 copies, and they're all numbered, individually numbered. So there's 500 of these. The first 50 copies are signature editions. So they came with some extra special goodies. Like this comes with. Like this one had a little packet. It's got Ultra Flesh Archives sticker. Behind here is a Leslie Winston trading card. There's a Leslie Winston drink coaster. There's even an actual Peep Show token inside here. It came with that. And then every single one of my releases comes with a condom. Have fun. Be safe. Okay. We're pro sex here, like sex positive, make love, not war. The world is so screwed up right now. Everybody just go get some, like let's just get over, less hate, more love. Then I've got a, let's see. So once I take the extra goodies out, I have a inlay. So you have a picture in there, and then you've got the disc, of course, if you can see it. The deluxe ones come with a 4-panel booklet. So this is designed like it's a sex catalog, so it's got like a fake order form on the back, and you can, the descriptions of Leslie's loops and everything are inside and all of that. The signature editions like this come with this special signature card. Here's Leslie's signature here.
Beautiful.
1 through 50, get that. I get number 1 all the time. Okay. I'm a collector too. So I get number 1, and the deluxe editions, and people have actually said that this is amazing too. The special collector's editions come with this info card, and what this is it's 2-sided. It's die cut, so there's a space cut out here. This is just kind of a card that discusses real quickly like the history of 8mm and Super 8 films, and also as it relates to the adult industry, and has a little bit of information on how we do our restorations here, or I do our restorations here. I say we, but it's me and a little bit of help from my wife. The kicker here, and I have to hand cut these and apply these all, so it takes a lot of time, is this right here. If you can see, is an actual strip of 8mm film from one of Leslie Winston's films. So you get a actual strip of film in the deluxe editions from the star. I have so many duplicates, and sometimes they're just damaged, and they're, instead of throwing them away, I'm going to cut them up and make use of them. So you get kind of a piece of history with it. And also, again, that reference point of like, wow, like, look at how small that frame is that we're working with. And then one thing about every release is the outer packaging is a paper bag. So this is kind of like, you just went to the dirty bookstore and you bought something.
Gotta hide it.
Supposed to, yeah. So they always come in a paper bag. Maybe someday I'll change that, but right now, people are liking that too. It's just, and a lot of this comes from that old DIY punk rock, upbringing that I had. Everything I've ever done has always been rooted in that mindset, for better or for worse. It's a drain on time. And, sometimes it's just like, dude, I can't cut these frames out anymore. I'm sitting there trying to watch TV, and I'm just like, gluing these things into these cards night after night. And so it gets tedious, but I mean, it makes me proud of the release because of how much I've put into it. It's everyone. If you buy this, you're buying a piece of me, basically. Like, so much effort that I put into there. So I hope people understand that. I hope people, appreciate that. And I appreciate it if people purchase them. They're getting that love in there. I think that the motto for the company is take pride in your porn. So I take pride in everything that I do, and it says it, right here on top of Leslie's box. It says it on the back of the releases. We have bumper stickers. Lisa Centrise, classic star. She has that bumper sticker on her car. She has pride in taking pride in her porn. So it's just it's a labor of love for sure. And I have the utmost respect for these people. And I do believe that these are like true. They're relevant, and they deserve respect and should be preserved. And then today, my new release, this is a standard release. So I have the deluxe versions, and then I have standard editions. So this is Endless Ecstasy with 3 X's, of course. Volume 1. So this is just kind of like, we'll say, the basic loop collection. Kind of miscellaneous loops, so to speak. Same thing. A lot of my layouts are the same. I try to keep things the same, aesthetic. And also this pink color here is like the official Ultra Flesh Archives color.
Perfect color.
So I went with yellow on this one. I'm actually replicating something from the period. there's a loop series called Lusty Ladies, and this is kind of a reference to the Lusty Ladies
Nice.
artwork that they had. So I'll be doing things that are references to stuff, whether people pick up on it or not. This is also numbered, and then again, you got your condom, of course. All my stuff also comes with random trading cards. This is Cerise Lynx. She's one of the Ultra Flesh girls. I have some I'm going to call them friends who are models that have that same kind of attitude and throwback interest and look. And there's also a Ultra Flesh Archives magazine that you can get free online. She was the cover model for the first issue. I'm working on number 5 right now. It's going to take me longer to do the issues because I'm really busy.
You're a little busy, yeah.
Yeah. But you can go online and download those. They're free. You can read them online or you can download. And it's a throwback to the old magazines. It's got a lot of old magazine ads. Don't write to those addresses because those offers are no longer valid. But there's old articles that I've culled from all the magazines and stuff that I have, and also new articles as well. Like every issue has a tribute to someone. We've done tributes to Kay Parker with people, leaving memories, and Gloria Leonard and Arbola and Herschel Savage. And so, we want to pay tribute to the legends that are no longer with us. And that's a lot of people, unfortunately. But also have fun and be rooted in that, that nostalgia. So you get random trading cards inside each release. You also get random trading cards and stickers and things like that when you order. This one has the Endless Ecstasy. It has an insert, and the back of the insert is just an old Loop magazine ad, and the inner inlay is also old ads as well. I love those things. I can look at those things for hours.
Well, and those are importantly needing to be archived as well. A lot of those things are a design aesthetic that a lot of people don't use anymore, and just for reference, those are super important.
Yeah. So I mean, it's deeply, like I said, deeply rooted in the nostalgia of the period. The next release that I'm doing is another deluxe. And I kind of want to go back to the idea of Wild Heart. So I'm doing a Serena collection. Of course, Serena is an absolute legend. There's actually going to be 2 volumes of that. There's 2 volumes of a Sue Nero collection. And there's going to be 1 volume with Rhonda Joe Petty. Wow. And then, so I asked all of them, give me 1 word that you think describes you best. And so they didn't really realize it, but I'm using that as their title. So that's how I got Wild Heart. And I asked Leslie, what is your favorite color? She said purple. So Wild Heart is in purple. So I'm using, I'm putting some of their own personality as, the title of it and everything. So Serena actually thought this was funny because she didn't realize that that's what I was going to call her releases. But I asked her what, describe yourself with 1 word. And she said effervescent. So, and actually that is a very good description of
works.
her.
Yeah.
So, and so, mid-March, I went and spent some time with her. She's family. And I think that, maybe one of the things that I have going for myself, is I really believe that what I'm doing is genuine, and my heart is in the right place. So I think that reflects in the way I behave, in the way I treat people, and in the stuff that I do. So I've been able to cultivate a lot of relationships, and in some cases very close relationships to people from the industry from that period. Serena's come and stayed at our house a couple times, and she had a birthday here once, and so it's not just I'm a fan, it's kind of corny, but I call her auntie, and that all started as a joke because if you're familiar with Richard Pacheco, he was a male actor at the time. He was Playgirl Man of the Year, 1978, whatever. Howie, I love you. I just adore him and his wife. And, I had mentioned to Serena that I want to adopt them as my adoptive parents. I wish that they were my parents. They're just so cool. And she goes, well, then what would I be, your auntie? and that's how that started. So she calls me nephew and niece to, my wife. And so we always just, it might sound weird, but that's just our banter that we have.
Oh, it's great.
And so mid March, I went and her and I got a hotel suite, and I went and we stayed together and worked on her release, the 2 volumes. And I will say, like the Wild Heart, the Leslie Winston, has full commentary from Leslie and myself. And as far as I know, I'm 99.9% certain that no one has ever done a commentary on their loops before. So that is a first. They've watched films and done commentaries on that, or maybe someone has done commentaries over loops, but not with the star of the loops. So that's part of the deluxe that I can get here, and that's because I have these relationships, these friendships with them. So Serena and I, we hung out for 4 days, recorded about 5 hours worth of commentary. Because there's 2 volumes, so one will come out. That'll be my next release, which I'm not going to commit to a release date, but probably going to be announced really soon. That's not going to be very long, hopefully.
Awesome.
And then the volume 2 will come out next year. So, and most of that is actually already done. Both of them are actually already done. So, and then probably after that there'll be another Endless Ecstasy volume, just a general loop collection. At the end of July, I'll be going to stay with Rhonda Joe Petty. Rhonda, I love you. So we can do her commentary for her collection. I can't wait to meet her dog, Billy, as well. We text dog pictures to each other like all the time. That's the kind of relationships that we have. And hers is going to be called Fierce. That's the word that she uses to describe herself. And her collection is going to be really good as well. A lot of her loops that I had were in really good condition. And I'll say, oftentimes, sometimes I have 3, 4, 5 copies of one thing, and I'll transfer all of them and use the best,
Nice.
the best version that I could find. So that in itself is a lot of work, because it's really hard to, even with your little spyglass, when you're looking at, on your light board, you can't really see what's going on in that tiny frame. You might get an hint of like what the colors are, how vibrant your colors are going to be, but you'll transfer it and go, oh man, there's a line down the whole length of the movie because someone had, dust in their projector gate when they were showing it, and it's damaged.
Not only that, you mentioned it earlier. We should talk about for just at least a split second the amount of storage space all this costs. Archiving all this properly on like proper good hard drives is one of the most expensive aspects of all of this, especially right now. We talked about anti-AI and all that stuff. AI bullshit has raised the price on storage more than threefold what it was even 18, 20 months ago. It is shockingly high right now. So that's even more reason people need to be supporting all of this for sure.
Yeah. And I'm getting ready. I've kind of almost maxed out my existing storage. So I'm getting ready I'm going to have to buy another tower so I can put all the drives in. And it's a scary thing too, because everything needs to have a backup, and I'm constantly running backups because, I learned the hard lesson, about 2 years ago. I had a hard drive crash on me, and then come to realize that my backup program hadn't backed up in months. So I lost a ton of data, a ton of work. I'm still not certain exactly what I lost, to be honest with you. And trying to get a hard drive repaired is like ransom. So these places will, and most of these places you go and you drop it off at some random office that there's nobody there, and they ship it to Seattle or somewhere, because they're going to put it in this, what do you call it? Dust-free room or whatever, and all this kind of stuff. And some of these are have helium inside and all this garbage now. So, I mean, they were like, it could cost you like $6,000 to get your data back. And it was like, are you seriously? And they're like, there's no guarantee that you're actually going to get anything, because we might open it up and it might just be destroyed. So it's just, the whole thing is a racket. So if you have a lot of data,
back it up.
back it up, at least once a week. I'm verifying that my backups are running, pretty much daily, but once a week, I just go to bed and run them, let them do their thing for a day or two, and honestly, pretty much, I won't say 24 hours a day, but close to it. At least one computer is running, doing the main, you put your filters on and everything, and you try to do like the basic restoration, and hopefully your settings are going to function appropriately on the frames. And again, because these are so small, sometimes movements aren't even captured, because you're not you're only doing like 16 or 18 frames per second, so you don't get that high velocity movement that you would with a higher frame rate. So you have that to factor in. And then if the image is faint, or it was manufactured poorly, now you could potentially, if your filters are on too strong, you get to a point where like fingertips or tips of other things, if you know what I mean, disappear. Certain fluids disappear. There'll be a quick movement, and like someone's hand will completely disappear. So you have to, sometimes I have to go back and start that section all over again, and go section by section and find the right settings. And then you also want to make sure that it still has, it's not too different from the remaining, so that you don't see a difference in quality when you go from one scene to another, and then sometimes you have to be really light on those filters, which means more manual corrections, and there's some that I probably said this already, but I've spent like a week plus working on, 8 minutes of footage. And some, if you go from average somewhere around like 8,000 to 10,000 frames, just for that alone. And then once I kind of sit there and, I'm surprised I don't have carpal tunnel from going,
right.
The little, frame by frame by frame by frame. And then you see something and it's like, oh, let me fix that. And then I get really obsessive with it. So it is a lot of work. And I've even put something online on, check me on the socials. The more explicit stuff is on X and or Twitter and Blue Sky, because they allow it. And then there's stuff on Facebook and Instagram as well. Hopefully, I'm probably about ready to get kicked off of there as it is.
Hope not.
They've threatened me a 1,000 times.
Oh, me too.
It's just so ridiculous. Saying that I'm soliciting sex, and I was like, no, it's just a photo. Like, there's not even any text on, anyways. But I put stuff online to show people, exactly like what the restoration process is, to try to promote that idea, get them to see like, it doesn't look like garbage, please go buy my stuff. And I even posted something a few days ago, just like, do you want to see a frame by frame? And it was like 2 minutes of me just, correct this, a couple frames, blot this out. If that didn't work, let me delete it, try this, try this other filter, and going through it. And, some people, appreciate that and enjoy that. But it is a lot of work. But then, so I'll do the Rhonda set, with her. We'll have, of course, commentary on that. And then there's 2 volumes of the Sue Nero. Hers is called Tigress. And I'm hoping to get commentary with her. She's a little bit difficult to connect with. But I'm hanging in there to make sure that, if I have to wait, I have to wait, because I want to have that commentary. There's several, I've mapped out probably 50 some releases. That I could go with. There's hundreds that I could do. Of course, it's just a matter of time and a matter of sales. The other deluxe editions, I'm going to do 750 of each of those. So Serena and Sue Nero's and Rhonda will be 750.
Nice. I
don't think at this point that I can go higher than that without sitting on stuff for a while. I understand that there's a limited, this is a niche of a niche. but hopefully, like, fans of like Milucine and the Vinegar Syndrome stuff will realize that I exist. And, Vinegar Syndrome is never going to touch 8mm stuff.
Right.
The only 8mm that they've included on any of their releases are the
Night of the
Behind the
Porno
Green
discs.
Door and that I know of. I mean, the Behind the Green Door and Resurrection of Eve. I provided the 8mm versions of those films for the extras, and also sent them Sodom and Gomorrah that they're going to include on that one as well. I submitted the 35mm trailer that I transferred and restored for Raw Love that was on the Sexploiters Raw Love split.
Nice.
That Kino put out. Yeah. And it was kind of funny because that came about because I had posted a photo of a box of stuff that I was digging through that had some 35mm trailers in it, with just some masking tape that said Raw Love and Bunny Yeager, Nude Las Vegas, and Lisa Petrucci from Something Weird Video like messaged me like right away and was like, "Hey, I saw in that box, like Eagle Eye,
God
Lisa,
bless Lisa.
saw that, and can you? Is that transferable?" So luckily, I had 2 copies of Raw Love because one was trashed. All the perforations were broken out. The second one was probably only missing like a couple seconds of footage at the beginning and the end. But I was able, and it was in great condition, so I barely even had to clean it up. So I restored that and sent that to Kino to include on that. And it's just like a random thing that just popped up, and I was, last minute, and they were able to include it. Unfortunately, the Bunny Yeager Nude Las Vegas trailer that I had, it was okay for about the first half, and then it's really curled on the second side. So I don't have a solid enough equipment to do something with that much damage on it. I don't have anything that's going to flatten it out to that degree. So it's not going to have the trailer on there, but it'd probably be a lot of work for a little bit of. Someone says, "I'm curious about the possibility of any gay loop collections." So when I talk about upcoming releases, I'm not going to give total specifics, but of course, Endless Ecstasy, I'm calling it endless because I can essentially put out an endless amount of these. Those will be frequent, probably more frequent than anything, all because they're easier to do. They're easier for me to do than the others. They don't require, commentary and all of those types of things. But I do have some other deluxe versions that I'm going to do for specific stars. Those won't have commentaries because many of them are dead, unfortunately, or have disappeared, or maybe there could be commentaries, but they wouldn't be with the performer. So I'll look at what my options are when I get to those. But there's dozens and dozens of those that I have planned. Of course, it all depends on the condition of the material. I could go through and transfer a bunch of stuff and then realize that, maybe I have 20 films by a certain person, and then I realize that 5 or 6, aren't usable. So then I'll start searching for those to try to get those. I hate paying a lot of money for stuff because I buy people's collections, and because I've been doing, even though I only have 2 releases, I've been working on this for like 3 or 4 years now. So once you kind of get known for, collecting a certain thing, people start contacting you. And I had a few places that were like, hey, I'm getting out of the dealer business, and I'd buy 700 loops from them at one time, or 1,500 loops, or whatnot. And honestly, in the course of, I'm going to say, within probably at one point within about a year and a half, I doubled my, my collection of loops because I was buying so much, and getting them, at a dealer cost, and the collector market now, unfortunately, I guess fortunately if you're a seller, but unfortunately if you are a purchaser, has just gone, it's backwards. Ever since eBay got rid of their adults only section, because I used to buy a ton of stuff on eBay, and it was reasonably priced. Even if you were bidding on it, you would still get it for a decent price. Now you look on eBay and people are selling nudie magazines from the 50s, which is stuff that I'm more actively collecting now than anything. They just think because it's from 1959, it's worth $79.99. It's like there's really like 3 nude pictures in there and a bunch of articles about hunting. So it's like, like it's not worth. Maybe you have Jane Mansfield on the cover. Yeah, you could probably get $30 for that. But it's a lot of people that don't know what they're what they have and what the value is. So everything is like really overpriced. The things that I'm selling on my website, I have a store, there's posters on there, and some of them are in the best quality you're ever going to find. Uncirculated, barely folded. And I sell some extra magazines and some loops and stuff. And I'm not really focusing so much on a store. They just have things to get rid of. I'm selling magazines for $7.99 to $12.99 that other places are trying to sell for $39.99. So once that stuff, I can liquidate the extras that I have and the things that I don't need. Primarily the store is just going to function for my releases. And there's going to be, I'll tell you, there's going to be a big boob series called Bazoombas. Who doesn't love the big boobs?
It's in the name.
Yeah, Bazoombas. Someone mentioned in the chat they're going to be gay collections, and I am working on starting that next year. That series will be called Man to Man. I'm not super knowledgeable about that genre. Not that I'm not interested in it. So I'm going to be relying a lot on Casey Scott for guidance and support on that. With his knowledge of the genre and the performers and stuff, because I'm going into that semi-blind. There's going to be some special editions, like the deluxe versions of specific lines, like specific companies. There's going to be, I'm also planning to do some like really old, like pinup, burlesque, nudie type stuff.
Nice.
I have a lot of that stuff. And some of it may have already been released, but the reality is my versions will be in higher quality than, no knock to what was out before, it's just, that was the way that they could do it when they did it. Now, I have the ability to,
you've upgraded.
So, there's a lot of stuff, in the works, and I have a ton of it already transferred initially. So it's just a matter of finding the time to, do, and I do everything here, like from top to bottom. I assemble the product, my wife helps me when she can, I'm packing your orders, I'm shrink wrapping your stuff. Every single thing, is I'm touching it. The only thing I don't do is actually print the covers,
Right.
Maybe I could fly to Taiwan and do it and get a discount. I don't know if I were able to do it myself, but yeah, you
need that old photocopier back that you had way back in the day.
And I want to make things fun. That's why they come in a bag. That's why there's trading cards with them. I'm going to be introducing some new trading cards soon. Lisa Centrice was one of the new trading cards. There'll be Serena cards in hers. You might not like this, but there may be some art cards in Serena's release. I know how you feel about art cards.
I'm just kidding. I'm into them. I just want to do more with them. That's the reality. I just wish they were a little more useful. But I will say, speaking of art, it was kind of a unique, interesting, like full circle moment of in my magazine for May. The brand new release is the first release in the list of Blu-ray releases for the month, and it was like, after the amount of magazines that Mark has worked on, after everything that has come, it's just so nice to be able to call attention to this in my little DIY magazine that's kind of getting out there to more and more people, and hopefully it helps get the word out for you.
And I appreciate you having me on. I'm kind of in a I'm in the adult content arena. Oh my God. It's ridiculous. I have bank accounts closed on me by the banks.
Yeah.
It's just so ridiculous. Everything is under attack these days. We're regressing so far, and part of that just makes me drive even harder to do this. It's like, you push back on me, I'm going to push back. It's like that speech in Rocky Balboa. It's not how hard you can hit, it's how hard you can, how much you can take and keep moving forward. So, I love you too, Howie. So some of it is just, I'm stubborn and I just keep pushing forward, and I hope people will support and see the love. And, I appreciate you giving me a platform to do this. Like I said, I'm kind of coming out of the shadows. I've never really, promoted myself personally as doing this. Even when I was doing the Rudy Ray Moore stuff, it was never like, I never published, I would run Rudy's Facebook page and all of that stuff. And it was never like me plugging myself in the posts. Right. It was always about Rudy. This is all about, these films. I just happen to be the person who's doing it, dumb enough to do it, I guess, because nobody else will. So I guess that's a good thing, because, it created an opening for me to step in and do that. But, I tend to take on, like I said, the projects with the most legwork involved. And I just hope people can appreciate that and, support. And I appreciate you giving me the space to talk about, dirty movies on your thing. So.
Always. And I mean, I've already told you this, but every single time you announce something, it will be blasted on all my socials, because I more and more people need to see these. More and more people need to understand the importance of them. Even just one person trying out one of them because it looks interesting and seeing the card on the inside and actually reading it is something that could change the exact mindset of somebody that suddenly becomes the next big archiver of this entire hobby. Who knows? It's just one of those moments. We just all lift each other up. Otherwise, this whole thing could fail at any moment. Basically, we are at that age of people passing away, of film deteriorating, of collectors not being able to afford things and having shit thrown away by landlords. Like, all of these things are always at risk.
But at the same time, we live in it's an amazing period. I'm sitting there looking at a pile of Jean Rollin UHDs, and just like, I'm almost in tears thinking, like, man, how far have we come? The old fart of me, like, kids these days, they don't know how good they had it. I'm remembering in the first Jean Rollin movie I saw was Grapes of Death. Blew my mind. Totally in French, could barely even see what was going on. I was like, oh my, like, something here is amazing, and it was ironic, because then I contacted him, and he didn't have a computer, so we would fax, if people even understand what a fax machine is. And he would always
congratulations. I'm jealous.
He would always complain, because when I would fax, he'd be asleep, so he'd be angry at me because I'd wake him up. And we'd go back and forth, and he would tell me what was going on, and he was really, really sweet. He would send me gifts. Like, he sent me like a 2-sheet Fascination poster and signed it like an original. He would have a book that would come out, and he would sign it and send it to me. So like I've kind of been able to cultivate, like I said, these relationships. One of my prized possessions is one of his smoking pipes that was gifted to me by his son after he passed. And I have like adult actresses who've passed. I have some of their ashes, that were given to me by family members, and those things are, it's not just like a morbid collector's item. That's just something that's personal. Like somebody gave this to me, like, it's an honor to have those things and have that respect that somebody would appreciate me that much to, consider me family or whatnot. So.
Well, Mark, you've clearly had this your entire life, this knack for archiving, this knack for giving integrity and respect to those that have not had it before. And I just hope people see that and feel intrigued to at least pick one up. ultraflesharchives.com. The store is open. I know a lot of people have already been getting this brand new release. Mine was ordered late, but I hope to receive mine soon. And cannot wait. These are great. I will continue to support and will continue to push it out there, because somebody needs to. And, like we were just alluding to, everything from PayPal stopping to provide payment services for certain companies, to eBay shutting down the adult side, to Facebook never allowing any of it and shutting down accounts when they frickin' reference it. It's all getting far too prudish. And the way that you can lift everybody up in the sector is just throw a little dosh their way. It's one release. Come on.
Yeah, and I appreciate you letting me blabber for 2 hours. I hope I didn't bore anybody out there. And
Not at all.
Hit me up online and leave comments on the social medias, and I appreciate shares and anything you could do to to help. I'm as grassroots and as possibly can be. I can't advertise anywhere. So I'm just relying on word of mouth. So appreciate it.
Absolutely. Everybody, again, ultraflesharchives.com. Mark, we'll have to do this again after we got 3 or 4 more limited editions. We'll come back and highlight them.
Right. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it so much.
Thanks so much. We'll talk soon.
All right. Take care.
Bye, all.
Thank you for watching The Disconnected. On the way out, make sure that you are subscribed to the channel, that you've liked the video, and that you've copied the link to be able to share with someone else that may appreciate this.
Okay, I'm ready. Welcome to Split Your Head, a bi-weekly podcast hosted by me, Bob, that covers the gamut of all things horror, exploitation, cult, underground, experimental, transgressive, bizarre, and indie. I've been fortunate enough to connect with some of the most groundbreaking and upcoming filmmakers, writers, and artists. Don't expect a typical interview. I love shooting the shit with my guests and stumbling on surprising topics that'll literally split our heads. From splatter comedies to nihilistic sleaze, uncomfortable art house to genre classics. If it gets my brain buzzing and cracking wide open like a watermelon full of blood, then I would like to share it with your ears. Now a part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network. Hi, Mom.
Do you love horror movies? Then welcome to Frightmares, a proud member of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network. I'm your host, Austin, and every week myself and a co-host will dive into the world of horror, from legendary classics to hidden deep cuts you might have missed. We kick things off with the latest horror watches, break down the IMDb stats, and take you through a full, in-depth review of the movie. Expect behind-the-scenes fun facts, ridiculous audience reviews, and plenty of laughs along the way. New episodes drop every Wednesday at 6 a.m., so join us on our exploration of the genre one movie at a time, and always remember to stay spooky. This is Frightmares.
Thank you for listening. To hear more shows from the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network, please select the link in the description